Loved ones, this video presentation is for Fundamentals of Entrepreneurship, Management 3234. This is session 3 in the syllabus. If we're meeting face-to-face, it would be 24 June 2020. The only thing I want to share with you administratively is on that day, 24th of June, that would be the last day to drop ad for the summer session. Just a point of awareness. So mark your calendars if you think you need to change your course study. Today is going to be pretty straightforward. I made a presentation to you not long ago about the Journal of Management Education article, which was meant to share with you not only the theoretical framework of systematic search, but to sort of give you an overview that developing a venture journal and related sorts of documents will be a fundamental piece of this course, one of your responsibilities. The article I'm going to present today is an article that was published probably 4 years before that. It was published in an engineering journal, the Journal of Engineering and Technology Management, and that was kind of neat for 3 entrepreneurship guys at U of L at the University of Louisville to publish in a well-regarded engineering journal. But engineers commercialize stuff. If you read the article in depth, and I hope you do, what you'll essentially realize, I know you know this, but this is just a point of realization, scientists often do basic research. They just explore stuff and discover things and have no idea what to do with it. Engineers take what was discovered and they commercialize it. They find applications for these scientific discoveries. So people in engineering are keenly interested in innovation and entrepreneurship, and I think that's why our paper was well received and published there. But really that's unimportant. It's neat from a scholar's perspective to publish outside of discipline. So we're going to do today we're going to do a relatively comprehensive sweep of this article. I will skip over some sections for 2 reasons. One is some of this, at least the theoretical piece, I introduced and developed when we talked about the Journal of Management Education article. The other thing that's true is I don't have any intention of reading this article for you. I hope that I can add more value than that. So I'll go through the article and I'll pull out and emphasize things that I think are important and developmental. As you know, you have 2 responsibilities with this article. First is to read it, and the second one is to provide for me an article review. I don't remember the dates for the article review, but it's in the syllabus. So, this will indeed be a relatively comprehensive review of the article, but I don't intend to hammer home things that we've talked about, the theoretical foundation. We'll talk about the things that are new and the things that add value. I want to tell you something though that's kind of neat. You know that the building is, I don't want to say unoccupied. There are a few faculty in here working, the people always in the dean's office doing dean's office things. But there are no students, there are no clubs, there are no activities other than a few solitary faculty doing important stuff like developing video presentations for their students. So the police departments in this community got together and they held a joint training exercise. This was the Statesboro Police Department, the Boulder County Sheriff's Office, the Georgia Southern Police Department, and Post 45 of the Georgia State Patrol. So those 4 agencies earlier today did an active shooter drill because they could run through the building and scream and do whatever they want. They didn't bring their pistols, they just had little rubber duckies, training pistols. But learning the protocols was a big deal, or rehearsing them. I guess they know the protocols. This was a rehearsal. And also part of its value was the fact that it was a joint exercise, that as I say, 4 agencies participated. So I'm only aware of 1 canine officer taking part in this exercise. SPD has a drug dog. When I say drug dog, his primary mission is detecting drugs, and he does that, of course, with his snout. The drug dog is named Mono, M-O-N-O. He's a really neat dog, as are all canine officers. And he was here as part of the exercise. And that turned out to be unfortunate. I mean, the training exercise went off well, but I didn't realize this. I thought they would stay perhaps on the ground floor. Well, as it turns out, part of their training exercise was to clear the building. So they did the second floor and the third floor. Well, y'all know that most of the econ guys are up on the third floor, and there's more weed in those offices than there is in the freshman dorm. I mean, a lot of token on joints going on up there. So poor Mono gets up there, has no idea, and he inhales so much of that Acapulco gold that he lost consciousness. They literally had to have the fire department guys show up and bring oxygen. Mono will be well, but that was a surprise to the police department. And I don't know what they did with any of the hashish or whatever they found up here. I don't need to know. I'm not an econ guy. But Mono as well, that's what's important. So let me do this. Let me jump to folio. I have our page open right now. Unsurprisingly, this article will be in that module that says article reviews, and this is the Journal of Engineering and Technology Management. So let me bring it up and we'll go through it together. I want to share something with you. I no longer do this. I'm in my 28th year in this academic career. For probably the first 24 or something like that. For the lion's share of my academic career, every time I publish an article, as I submitted the manuscript for the whole review process, I've always had an epigram. I've always led off with something that I think is both fun and pertinent to what we're doing. This is a quote from George S. Patton Jr., an extraordinary general who served primarily in World War II, led the Third Army in the invasion of Germany. Just a remarkable man. But if you see the quote, I've been studying the art of war for 40 years. A surgeon who decides in the course of an operation to change his objective is not making a snap decision, but one based on knowledge, experience, and training. And he ends that by saying, so am I. So the point is, if you have significant domain competence, if you have a lot of knowledge in a domain, that informs your decisions and your actions. And that is precisely what Patton was saying here. So let's roll into this thing. Again, I'm going to quickly pass through those areas that represent the theoretical foundation, because we spoke of the systematic search in a prior class. So let me go through this selectively and pull out what I think is new and important. You see that comment about theoretical framework and the side heading that says 2.1, alertness versus systematic search? In the introductory part of this article, we talk about the differences between those two theoretical foundations, alertness as a search technique and systematic search. And again, that just revisits what we've already spoken of. But the people who are reading this article, it's improbable that they would have read the one in the Journal of Management Education. So clearly there has to be a foundation. The other thing that's sort of critical here is, we introduced some new things, but this paper is neither an educational piece nor is it a conceptual piece. This is an empirical examination. We have to introduce the competing theoretical frameworks, and then we have 4 hypotheses, and we gather data, and you'll see all about the collection and the analytics and the interpretation. But this is an empirical study. We gather data, analyze those data, interpret the results, and then present the results, along with their implications and their limitations. So this is not theoretical. It's not meant to be an educational piece. This is 3 folks at the University of Louisville reporting an empirical study. Here's some of the new stuff. The side heading, evaluating wealth generating potential. It was in this study that we first introduced this framework, FVRI, this framework that permits an aspiring entrepreneur to assess the wealth generating potential of an idea. I'm not saying this because we're important or special or uptown. This, however, is an original contribution. No one had ever before said, here is a framework that you can overlay on a commercializable idea and have a reasonable sense to know if it has the potential for success or not. So again, it's '07, I get that, but this is new stuff, and the reality is if you don't read these journals, you have no idea that this stuff is out there. So, we talk about Jay Barney's work. You see he is highlighted in the top line on the screen. Jay Barney was a brilliant scholar. I think at the time he did this work, he was probably at Ohio State. Go Buckeyes. Then he's moved to some other places since then, but just an indescribably bright man. So Barney is credited with bringing to the organizational sciences a theory called the resource-based view. And Barney's argument is it's a firm's resource endowments that predicts the firm's success in any given market. And he talks about 4 specific things that would permit us to evaluate the potential that a resource endowment has to create value rather well. The first thing he says, value, and this is pretty straightforward. The short version is, in the context of a business, value is easily defined. It either means that you're doing something to increase revenue or you're doing something to decrease costs. If you accomplish either of those objectives in the context of a business, then clearly whatever that is adds value. Rarity. He makes it clear that rarity is not the same as uniqueness, but that if everyone possessed the same resource, there'd be no potential for competitive advantage. The third requirement is inimitability. Can this resource be imitated? And he really talks about 2 things. He talks about, can it be duplicated, and are there technologically equivalent substitutes? Let me scroll down because I don't have a clicker. So, can this resource either be duplicated or is there a technologically equivalent substitute? Now, the last thing he talks about in his framework was organization. Is the firm organized to exploit this discovery? Say for the sake of discussion that you get an accounting degree and you go to work for a CPA firm anywhere on the planet, and you become a supremely talented tax practitioner. And right now, I don't care if you do it for individuals or corporations or nonprofits or whatever, but you get awfully good at that. And in this firm as well, you have colleagues, you have coworkers who are really, really good at historical financial statements. You have colleagues that are wonderful at advisory services. So in this example I'm creating, your firm possesses remarkable competencies in all the things that would matter to businesses from an accounting perspective. You can do a great job in terms of reporting the results of operations. You can do a superb job in terms of tax planning and tax preparation. You can help them with whatever advisory services they might need, whether it's to work on cash budgets or sales forecasts or mergers and acquisition stuff with valuations. So your firm possesses remarkable talent. But if the firm is not organized to take those competencies to market, nobody knows. Nobody uses you. You don't get to generate invoice, you don't get to collect monies for the work that you've done. So the thing about organization, in my goofy example, your accounting firm has remarkable talent in 3 critical areas of business: advisory services, taxation, and historical accounting. But there has to be marketing. Somebody has to put your talents in front of prospective clients and say, we have remarkable people, you need to use them. So this point about organization, is the firm organized to take whatever these discoveries are and exploit them? When I say exploit them, I simply mean take them to market. Do something that creates a sustainable competitive advantage. So this is Barney's framework. VRIO, value, rarity, inimitability, and organization. And I want to show you how we use this as an intellectual footprint, and we built this wealth evaluating framework from it. So, we suggest an order, and you can see why reading this. And what we're suggesting is the revised order for requirements for discovery and exploitation, to discover an idea and then commercialize it, to take it to market. There has to be fit, value, rarity, and imitability. Now, the fit thing is essentially an analog to organization. The fit thing says, do you, as an aspiring entrepreneur, have the competencies in that domain? Do you fit with the idea so that you can take it to market? You may be great at being a pianist or as a motorcycle racer or mechanic or as a soccer coach. But the point is, fit essentially talks about your suitability. Do you have domain knowledge, domain competence? Can you take this thing to market because you know where the opportunities are? So what we've done is we took the resource-based view, which is essentially a theory of profitability at the organizational level, and we've created an evaluation framework that permits you to overlay on any idea that you think has promise and decide a priority before you do anything, if it has the potential to generate wealth. Do you fit? Does it create value? Is it somewhat rare? And is it inimitable? Can it be copied? So let me scroll back down. So now we have 4 hypotheses, and what that means is we have 4 things that we want to test, because what we're doing fundamentally in this study is we're comparing success of people who search for ideas using that theoretical framework called alertness. We're comparing their success with innovation seekers who are using systematic search. We have 4 hypotheses, and it's worth showing ever so quickly. The first one says the group using systematic search will identify more venture ideas than the ones who rely solely on alertness. The second one, if you use systematic search, you'll use your domain knowledge to discover more ideas than people using alertness. And there are 2 others. Let me scroll down to them. The third one, we believe, we the group that did this research, we had the notion that the people in the alertness group would generate more ideas than the systematic search group. There were reasons that we thought that was true. And then the fourth one, in our view, is by far the most important. The fourth one, those people who are trained in systematic search will discover more wealth-generating ideas than the alertness group. Now, clearly I'm going to now go to the design of the study because I want you to see how we tested this. So we tested these 4 hypotheses by using a controlled experiment. We had access to a big sample frame, a publicly held company that had 1,600 employees in its Louisville offices that were all IT people. This was a company that did credit card processing, and they did it on a nationwide basis. So they had 1,600 IT people. I mean, they had plenty of other employees, but there were 1,600 IT people. And you'll see, we talked about the sample selection. Once we got buy-in from senior management, we said, we have no idea how to choose these people, so could you provide us with 60? And they did. So we'll talk about that. But the point is, we got these 60 people and we bifurcated them. We cut them in half into 2 groups. And we assigned half of them to the group where they were trained in systematic search. How do you systematically search for wealth-generating ideas? And the other half were randomly assigned to the alertness group. And we had training there, but there are no protocols. It's essentially a directionless search. So let me go down. So the point is, 60 IT people. Once we got the 60 people, we randomly assigned them to the 2 groups, which should have taken care of any intra-group differences. It should have neutralized them. And then one group, the control group, got nothing. The treatment group got training in systematic search. So let me go down to sample selection. Actually, I preempted this. I already told you what we did. By design, we wanted to get people from one functional area because they would have similar training skills and task orientation. If we got accountants, engineers, people from legal department, we would have had enough variability across training and work experiences that it would be difficult to identify any discernible changes. So we purposefully wanted to get a group of people from one functional area. The truth is, it wouldn't have mattered if we gotten 60 accountants or 60 engineers, but the fact that they were similarly educated and had similar task orientation was what mattered to us. So the training protocols, both groups met 6 times over an 8-week period. Every session followed an agenda, there were specific objectives, and the short version is when I say they met 6 times, we met once a week for 5 weeks. Then we, the people who were conducting the study, gave them 2 weeks of release time to go find ideas, and then we reconvened on week 8, and that's when they reported out their findings. So this section that I have projected right now simply talks about the variables that we measured. You see that we had a group variable which identified either control group or treatment group. We had a variable for previous entrepreneurial experience. We didn't know if anybody had any, so we gathered information about that. We had a variable for specialized knowledge. This was a self-report, but they would say to us that my knowledge in this domain is what led me to discover that idea. So they would tell us if they had specialized knowledge or not. And then, of course, is the idea got the potential to generate wealth. Now, this wealth generating thing, we got 3 judges from the pool of senior executives in this big publicly held company because they knew the domain and we didn't. So all we asked them to do is we said, when the participants in this study generated an idea at the end of this, we're going to give you all these ideas, and we want you to rate them in terms of its probability. So they did, if it had no value, it scored 0, and then you see that maximally that you could have scored 8. We had 5 discrete classifications, 0, 1, 2, 4, and 8, based on what the idea seemed to contain in terms of its potential, its viability, I guess. So the judges were drawn from this company so that they could evaluate the idea. I don't think that the 3 of us would have been able to do it. We being the 3 academics that actually did the study. So we got people that had domain knowledge to evaluate the ideas. And the last 2 variables, you see at the very bottom, the 2 things that are italicized. Age and gender are just control variables. Age was continuous, gender was categorical. So again, it was just, it's often important in any empirical study to see if there are any differences attributed to age or gender. For example, is there any evidence to suggest that women discover more cool ideas than men? Is there any evidence to suggest that older people discover more cool ideas than younger people? We don't know. That's why we gather data and measure it. So we have these 2 control variables which would have been scores for each of them on every one of the participants. So, in that one paragraph under hypothesis testing, I'm going to give you the short version of what happened. And it's actually important because there were results that surprised us. Excuse me. The first hypothesis had no support. We just could not detect a difference between them. The second hypothesis predicted that systematic search would identify more venture ideas than the alertness group, and it did. Very, very high probability of correctness. So the second hypothesis was supported. The third hypothesis was not. We thought the alertness group would identify more ideas than systematic search, but that's not what happened. The alertness group identified 79 ideas, the systematic search group identified 98. So we were wrong. The fourth hypothesis, fundamentally, is the most important one in our study. And that is, we predicted that the systematic search group would identify more wealth-generating ideas than the alertness group. And again, very, very significant. Probability literally 99% that that's what would happen. So, and then we did some other stuff. We looked at, we did some regression models to look at control variables, and we found out that neither age nor gender explains any differences in this ability to discover. Nothing about age or gender had any predictive role in these outcomes. So, 2 of the hypotheses were not supported, 1 and 3. 2 of the hypotheses were supported, 2 and 4, and clearly in our view, those were the ones that were critical. Will you use systematic search, and do you find more ideas that have wealth-generating potential? So I'm not going to make you worry about these tests. We did a manipulation check. That was just sort of to see if our training was good, and it turned out well. Discussion. Okay, this is pretty important. We sort of struggled here in the discussion. The discussion tries to answer a simple question. What do these results mean? That would be an excellent side heading to take the place of discussion. But in academic journals, what readers and what editorial review boards expect to see is a section called discussion. We discuss the results, and we try to discern what these outcomes mean. So, we don't really know what happened on the first one. We made several suggestions, but we also pointed out the limitations. It's possible, for example, that similar technical backgrounds sort of obscured any differences. But we're speculating, and we say that. We make that clear in the paper. We're not stupid or arrogant. Now, the second, in fact, if you see that second line, the differences may have nullified any experiential advantage, but we acknowledge that view to be speculative. We know that we're speculating because we don't know what caused that result. The second one was a big deal because the systematic searchers outperformed the alertness group to discover high potential ideas. Systematic search group found 10 as judged by the raters. The alertness group found 0. Not a single idea in the alertness group that met those criteria of fit, value, rarity, and inimitability, not one. And I wouldn't have expected a result to be that good. But that is what happened. These results are inarguable. That's what we found. So hypothesis 2 is powerful because it says that if you train people in systematic search, they know what they're doing. They have outcomes that really have high potential. There's another thing that came out of hypothesis 2 that's actually heartening, and that is it gives us evidence. Admittedly, it's only one log on the pile, but it gives us evidence that these techniques of systematic search are teachable. They can be transferred to people in a relatively straightforward classical teaching environment, and that's also good. Not just that they have those outcomes, but that there's evidence that this is a teachable kind of skill. So now we're looking at hypothesis 3. We assumed, that's a fair thing. Remember, all hypotheses are meant to be tested. We assumed that the people in the alertness group, since they had no boundaries, since they weren't constrained to domains where they had experience, we assumed that they would find more ideas than the other group. Well, we assumed wrong. Not fatal, but that wasn't the outcome we expected. And then, where's H4? Let me scroll down some more. Okay. First paragraph on the new page. The key hypothesis in this study is the fourth hypothesis. The prediction was the people in the systematic search group would discover more ideas with wealth-generating potential than the alertness group. And that's a big deal. You can look at the probability. This probability says literally that there's a 99% probability that hypothesis is right. If we replicated the study 100 times, we'd get the same result 99 out of those 100. So this is big stuff because clearly it suggests that systematic search works and that it's teachable. So, and you can see the last comment. This augments the result of hypothesis 2, that systematic search is a transferable skill. It's not some genetic gift. It's not a message passed at birth. It's a transferable skill. That's what you and I do in a classroom or in this kind of messiness. Now, we talk about limitations and directions for future research, and here's what I want you to do. I just want you to read that section. I don't see any particular value in me regurgitating what's there. We probably pointed out in this part of the article 6 or 7 things that do legitimately limit the generalizability of this study. And then later, we talk about things that are potential uses for practitioners and what we, as academics who study these things, might do next. So the point is that the reason I wanted to share this article with you is really twofold. The one we talked about earlier, the Journal of Management Education, was an article. It's an andragogy article. It's how we take this information and we teach it to adult learners. So it's an educational piece. The article that I'm presenting you today is an empirical study. 3 guys at the University of Louisville put together a study which turned out well in the sense that we got results and we got non-results, so we learned a lot. We learned what works and what doesn't work. We did it in a pretty neat environment, a big company. Now, one of the limitations, and that's in this section, we point this out, we have no way of knowing, since management chose the 60 subjects, we don't know if they picked the 60 brightest stars in the galaxy or 60 black holes. They might have picked 60 people and they said, you know, these people are so worthless, we won't, if they do nothing for 8 weeks, we won't miss it. We have no way of knowing. But on point, H2 and H4, the second and fourth hypotheses, were the ones that were critically important, and there were strong positive results. That's impossible to ignore. So clearly, there are always limitations to every study, always. And we try to be authentic and point at everything that we can think of. But there's also a lot of promise. So the distinction is here, there are 2 things that you really need to grab from this article. First is we're reporting the results in an empirical study. We designed a study, we gathered data, we analyzed the data, we interpreted it. What do these data mean? What can we do with this stuff? And then the second thing that appears in this article for the first time ever is this, this framework that permits you, an aspiring entrepreneur, to take any idea that you think may have value and overlay that framework. And if you can answer those questions affirmatively, do I fit? Do I have competence to take this article to market? Can it create value? Is it relatively rare? Can it be imitated? If you can answer those 4 questions affirmatively, your idea has wealth-generating potential. I don't know what's going to happen because I'm not the guy taking it to market. You are the girl or the guy taking it to market. The distinction between having an idea and executing it is enormous, and I get that. But this is pretty neat that you can actually have this sort of viability test on an article. So the 2, I believe, the 2 significant pieces of this article to you are the fact that we report an empirical study. You see that there's actually evidence that this stuff works, this teaching of systematic search. And in this article, again, for the first time, we introduce this framework that permits you to evaluate any idea. So, gosh, you're going to be heartbroken because I'm done. I know, I can see the tears welling up. Yes, just, you're crushed. So since we're done, I have to close with the attendance verification question. What did the Statesboro Police Department K-9 officer Mono find on the 3rd floor of the Parker College of Business? All right, love you. I'll be back soon. This is not where I say peace out. It's not where I say that.